Welcome back to our podcast where we are to deliver our topic today about key moments in historical and also the analyzing of the impact on international relation. Today we are discussing about foreign policy of the President of Indonesia is Megawati Soekarnoputri, which lasted from 2001 until the 2004. This was a transformative period for Indonesia. Why? Because both domestically and also the internationally, Indonesia was began into the open their stuff into the international and also the insightful things. So, joining with me today, we are with three insightful panelists. First of all, we have
Rachma Amellya.
and then
My name is Raso.
My name is Rafli.
and then my name is Petrik Eliazer Malini. So, before we dive into the specific, let's take a frame of our discussion for today. So, as you know, Megawati presidency came at a critical time when Indonesia, due to in historical way, first of all, because the nation was grappling with political instability following the fall of Mr. Suharto, and also Indonesia was got with financial crisis, and Indonesia was facing also the global crisis in economical and also in all of the problem, and also this factor heavily influenced her foreign policy decision. So let's start by understanding the context in which her administration operated. So to set the stage, maybe could you please describe the main priorities of Indonesia foreign policy during Megawati presidency?
I would like to say that one of the key priorities way to destabilize Indonesia's image internationally, the country had just emerged from a period of economic turmoil and political reform. Like Megawati's administration focused on projecting a sense of stability to attract foreign investment and a global and rebuild international confidence. The global community was watching Indonesia closely, and particularly after the fall of Suharto, as they want to see whether the country could successfully transition back to democracy or not.
Absolutely. The broader international context also played a huge role. Post 9/11, the global focus shifted significantly towards counterterrorism. Then, as the world's largest Muslim majority country, Indonesia was in the spotlight. Megawati's foreign policy had to navigate this new global narrative while managing domestic challenges, including the rise of radicalism and separatist movements.
Great. Another critical focus was ASEAN. Indonesia has historically been a leader within ASEAN, and Megawati's presidency was no different. Her administration prioritized strengthening regional cooperation, particularly in political stability and economic recovery. The Bali Concord II in 2003 stand out as a milestone in regional integration efforts.
I would like also to give a highlight that Indonesia's foreign policy at this time had a dual focus. On one hand, there was a need to maintain strategic relations and with a major global powers like the United States, China, and Japan. And on the other hand, there was a strong emphasis that on regionalism and ensuring that ASEAN's centrality in addressing Southeast Asia economic and security challenge, I think.
So as we know, that was very interesting because how they prioritize reflected both Indonesia domestic needs and also the international aspiration. So maybe we can the topic. We need to explore what is the key of the policies and action that define Megawati foreign policy. That's it. So first of all, if we are talking about the Megawati foreign policy, that she was taking a lot of role here because the action during Megawati presidency was very, let's say, spectacular because she was playing a main role here. So can you share some examples like what kind of action, how her administration approached regional and also the global issues with one?
One of the standout achievements was the Bali Concord II, I think, signed during the the ninth ASEAN Summit in 2003. This agreement was a pivotal in laying foundation for the ASEAN community, focusing on three pillars like political security, economic, and social-cultural cooperation, and it is underscored the Indonesia's commitment to regional leadership and multilateralism.
The Bali Concord II was indeed a landmark, but it also revealed certain limitations in Indonesia's leadership. Critics argued that Indonesia's role in Asia during this period was somewhat subdued compared to its leadership in the past. For example, Singapore and Malaysia often appeared in more proactive in setting ASEAN's agenda. Some felt that Megawati's administration was overly cautious in asserting Indonesia's leadership.
Okay, on the global stage, Megawati's presidency coincided with the US-led war on terror. Following the tragic Bali bombings in 2002, Indonesia's cooperations with the US and other Western countries are counterterrorism increased significantly. Okay. This included intelligence sharing in security reforms and active participation in international counterterrorism initiatives.
I think this collaboration was essential in rebuilding international confidence in Indonesia. I mean, it's a stable and secure nation, of course. However, it was not without controversy. Domestically, there were concerns about sovereignty and the perceived alignment with Western interests, which some argued that could alienate certain domestic groups, I think.
Economically, Megawati's administration focused on attracting foreign investment and reviving Indonesia's economy. While there were efforts to emphasize stability and reform, challenges like corruption, bureaucratic inefficiency, and weak legal frameworks continued to deter investors. For instance, despite optimistic projections, Indonesia struggled to compete with other Asian countries like Vietnam and Thailand in attracting FDI.
Okay. Another key aspect was Indonesia's participation in the non-alignment movement, or NEM. Megawati's government used this platform to advocate for equitable trade policies and highlight the concerns of developing nations. However, some critics argue that Indonesia could have been more assertive in pushing for reforms within NAM itself.
So from this discussion, we can get like this example illustrate how the complexities of Megawati's foreign policy. So let's shift gears to discuss the debate surrounding its effectiveness and also the legacy it left behind. So first of all, what did you think, guys? Are the main points of debate regarding Megawati's foreign policy? Was it pragmatic, or did it fall short of expectations?
Well, I think the debate often centers on whether her approach was too reactive. Supporters argue that given Indonesia's fragile state, a cautious and pragmatic approach was necessary. Megawati prioritized domestic stability and rebuilding international confidence, which were immediate concerns.
Okay. With those critics, however, contend that her administration missed opportunities to assert Indonesian leadership on the global stage. For instance, Indonesia could have been more vocal with the non-alignment movement, or more proactive in addressing global issues like climate change, which will become increasingly important during that period.
Another contentious issue was her handling the counterterrorism, while the cooperation with Western nations brought significant resources and support. It also alienated the certain domestic and constitutions, and critics felt that the focus on the counterterrorism is overshadowed with other pressing issues such as poverty, elevation, and economic reform.
Well, we should also consider the structural challenges she faced. Indonesia was still recovering from the Asian financial crisis, and political reforms were ongoing. These constraints limited the scope of what her administration could achieve in terms of bold foreign policy initiatives.
So if we can see from our discussion today that let me to summarize this one, like Megawati foreign policy, it doesn't not too pragmatic if we can see. Like we also see have the debate here, but often centers on whether her approach was too reactive. Also, she was taking the critics, however, contend that her administration missed opportunities to assert Indonesia leadership on the global stage. She want to take Indonesia as the main power here too, and maybe so would you agree that Megawati foreign policy was more about laying the groundwork for the future administrations rather than achieving immediate breakthroughs?
I think that's a fair assessment. Her presidency helped stabilize Indonesia international image and set the stage for future leaders to take more assertive roles. For example, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, presidency benefit from groundwork laid during Megawati's administration.
I think it's a classic case of a balancing short-term pragmatism with a long-term vision. While her policies may not have groundbreaking, they were essential in navigating a particularly turbulent period of Indonesia's history.
So, based on our discussion, before we are going to the last session, that is conclusion, maybe I want to ask to you guys about what did you think about Megawati foreign policy during her presidency from 2001 until 2004? What is characteristic, and also what is the continuity, or maybe what is the new idea from her like that?
Okay.
My country knew all the policies. I think I will say Megawati's policy about free and active foreign policy. Megawati emphasized free and active foreign policy, which is aimed to restore Indonesia's dignity and regain the trust of the international partners. This approach reflects a return to confidential foreign policy themes that had been prominent during the New Order era under President Soeharto. And I will say one more about the ASEAN centrality. Her administration reaffirmed ASEAN that the cornerstone of the Indonesia's foreign relations, emphasizing the importance of regional stability and cooperation. This is including strengthening the bilateral relations with the neighbor, like ASEAN or the Southeast Asia countries, which was seen as an essential for domestic recovery efforts.
Well, my opinion on the domestic priorities driving foreign policy, it's focused on national interest. Megawati's foreign policy was largely driven by domestic concerns, such as national unity, economic recovery, and political stability. The government sought to use foreign relations as a tool to support these domestic priorities. For instance, her visits to major powers like the United States and Japan were framed as efforts to enhance cooperation for national interests. And one more, I would say that economic recovery and international support is that the Megawati administration faced significant economic challenges. Post-reformation, thus, it's actively sought international support from institutions like the IMF or World Bank, indicating a pragmatic approach to foreign relations aimed at securing economic stability.
And my opinion is about engagement with major powers. Okay, relationship with the United States following December 11, 2001 attack in New York. Megawati's government positioned Indonesia as a strategic partner for the U.S., particularly in counterterrorism. Okay, she was one of the first leaders to meet George W. Bush after the Brexit, which was signaled Indonesia's importance in U.S. foreign policy in Southeast Asia. Also, there's a balancing act. While seeking closer ties with Western nations, Megawati had to navigate complex domestic issues, including human rights concerns and regional conflicts. Her administration faced criticism for its handling of the various internal conflicts while trying to maintain favorable relations abroad.
So maybe if I can take a conclusion, overall Megawati foreign policy can be seen as the new era of to attempt the balancing of Indonesia historical diplomatic principles. And then, if I'm not missed, she was pressing need for her domestic stability and also the economical recovery from Indonesia itself. And also her administration maintained established diplomatic relationship while also adapting to new global realities post 9/11 tragedies. They emphasized on ASEAN, also the new major power like the US was highlights her pragmatic approach in a time of significant transition for Indonesia itself. So as we can conclude from our discussion, maybe it will be clear that Megawati's foreign policy was shaped by the unique challenges of their era, like Indonesia facing the new era also, and then she was facing with the global crisis too, with the monetary crisis, obviously. And then while opinions vary on its effectiveness, her administration focused on regional stability, counterterrorism, and also the economic recovery reflected the priorities of the time. Like that, maybe.
Her cautious approach might not have delivered major breakthroughs, but it was instrumental in stabilizing Indonesia's position both regionally and globally.
Indeed. Her legacy lies on the groundwork she laid particularly in ASEAN and counterterrorism cooperation, which later administration built upon.
I think it is a reminder of complexities of the foreign policy during the transitional periods. Megawati's administration navigate these complexities with a focus, pragmatism, and stability.
So maybe I think it was totally clear for our discussion today for our podcast. Thank you for all of you that have joined it and become the panelists for this discussion, for sharing your insights. And thank you for our listeners for tuning in. We hope you found today's discussion insightful, talking about the foreign policy of Megawati's era. And hope you found today's discussion. You will share through our link below. Join the conversation on our social media channel and let us know your thoughts on Megawati foreign policy. Until next time, stay curious and engaged by us. See ya.
Yeah.